Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is DLPOV, and thank you for joining me for another week of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. This episode 13, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of those one-off stories. So let me just get on over to the overview and not waste too much of your time. The story starts off with it starts off with a radio man kind of like giving a narration of this random radio station that are playing in the background, and we slowly shift over to Jotaro and the rest of the guys, now with Joseph Joestar, and having some coffee by a cafe, and Jotaro is basically just straight up explaining the whole situation with Akira, like what's happening, like this, like the cops are investigating his apartment. Akira is behind bars. Jotaro went to threaten him personally and tell him like, hey, like if you try anything behind my back, like, I'm gonna fuck you up. So, and Akira like is all of a sudden like just a complete pussy towards Jotaro, which in a way, it's a bit of like a reoccurring theme when it comes to like JoJo characters, especially since Stardust Crusaders, and that is that main villain, not main villain, but that, so to say, training villain who is like scary as fuck, but then all of a sudden, like once they're defeated, and then they're like complete pussies. And Jotaro brings up a very interesting fact, and that is the fact that since Red Hot Chili Pepper is no longer, it's in pieces, like Akira should be no threat. So I think um, since JoJo in general has certain plot holes. I think this is one of those plot holes, and I can't remember if it happens in the manga or not, or if it's even stated in the manga, but this is just one of those plot holes that's just coming up, and that is the fact that if you destroy a stand user stand, the stand user still can't survive for some fucking reason. So, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's straight up, if it's like this in the manga as well, because it's very possible since future parts do hold certain big plot holes. But regardless, I guess you can say this something bizarre. Anyway, then we slowly shift over after Jotaro gives explanation, after he tells like the rest that he also has the arrows and the bow, and they're going to use the Speedwagon Foundation to examine its abilities, its capacities, and search out other possible stand users in the town that might have gotten affected. After that, Koichi just straight up tells Josuke like, hey, isn't it time for you guys to get going? And we find out that Josuke and Joseph are going to have this little father-son trip. Now, the first thing that Josuke does is, of course, call his mom to verify if she's going to be home all day, just to make sure either two things. One, that if he's walking outside with Joseph, that they don't encounter her, or that he has to keep an eye out for her, or two, that he might have wanted to bring in Joseph home just to, while she wasn't around, basically. They wait by a bus stop, and as Josuke turns his back, all of a sudden Joseph is gone. Old man Joseph is gone, and when he asks like these random people around the area, like if they saw like an old man, they tell him that he got into a certain bus that leads him completely somewhere else. Josuke, being the protagonist, he manages to run the bus before it gets to the highway and stop the bus just to get Joseph out. And this is when we get introduced to our today's episode stand user, and that is the Invisible Baby. The Invisible Baby, its stand name, if I'm not mistaken, is Achtung Baby, Achtung Baby, and its abilities, as you could already see, it's basically just to make himself invisible. Joseph and Josuke don't know what the fuck's going on, and they just understand that they're dealing with this stand user. At first, Josuke thinks that someone is using a stand on the baby, and that someone made the baby invisible. But then Joseph goes further into it and says that maybe the baby just unconsciously just made himself invisible. I think Joseph believes that the baby is the stand user, and he brings up like the interesting point, which is like some guys, when they're stressed out, they unconsciously start growing gray hairs, and that is a very good point to make, since in Stardust Crusaders we had people like Polnareff who didn't get shot by an arrow, who just developed their stand as they were growing up. So maybe this baby was not the work of an arrow being shot to it, but more of a baby just who happens to have a stand and happens to develop it. Now, they need to find a way to find this baby's mother, because like, why are they going to take care of a baby that's not theirs? And so they go to a store, and Josuke brings up this point of like, hey, I cannot be seen like buying shit for a baby, like it's gonna look really weird, especially for me, like me being, it's gonna make me look like more of a criminal who got someone pregnant or some shit like that. So he makes Joseph go. Joseph doesn't have any American money, so Josuke gives him his bank card, tells him not to spend too much because all of his savings are in there. And Josuke, he doesn't get tricked, but he gets confused to the point where he has to buy so much stuff just because he doesn't know how to deal with baby shit. He has to buy so much stuff just to make sure that he has everything they need. He heads out. They decide to like give the baby some clothing. Joseph thinks of an idea like putting like some makeup on the baby to give the baby her more of a skin color, and so seeing the baby's form. And while Joseph tries to pick him up, the baby all of a sudden, like, is this thing really reminds me of like the world, like that same sound effect, like the it has this sound effect of like when Dio created a world, and it creates a sphere around it and around Joseph's hand, and all of a sudden everything that the baby had on, this turns invisible, and Joseph, because he was holding the baby, turns also invisible. He puts the baby down, does not work. His hands are still invisible for some fucking reason. And so we learn that the baby's ability is basically to make itself invisible, anything that's attached to it or touching it invisible. And even if the baby is no longer in contact with the thing or the person, like the whatever was touching it remains invisible until, I'm guessing, until the baby chooses not to leave it alone. Very interesting stand, I will say. Like, even though I'm not a fan of the actual story, I'm pretty, like, I must admit that the idea behind the stand was pretty cool. Joseph decides to put him in the baby carriage. Some asshole thinks like, oh, like, what the fuck is all that rubbish, because the baby like made the part of the baby carriage invisible, so you only see pipes and wheels, and he thought that was garbage. So some asshole like was riding around with bicycle, smoking a cigarette, shoots the cigarette in the baby carriage. Joseph gets a hold of the cigarette butt, accidentally hits the baby carriage, which starts falling down, and Josuke gets pissed off, calling Joseph irresponsible for not being careful enough. However, Joseph was not looking at the baby carriage, so he himself took away his attention out from the baby, so being a little bit hypocritical there. The baby falls into water, and they have no fucking clue what to do, because the water is transparent, it's translucent. So the baby being invisible himself, like, this is a cool situation that Araki put the baby in, like the baby is gonna fucking die. What's like, this is like putting a needle in a haystack and making the needle invisible. So, and having to look for the needle. So Joseph, not like just thinking like this, and I'm an old man, like I'm gonna fucking die any moment. So you know what, Josuke, like, just give my regards to your mom. Cuts himself in the wrist, blood starts flowing through the water, and this is a really cool idea, like really well thought of, Rocky and Joseph. But like the whole blood flowing toward around the water, being spread around the water, and the baby, since its abilities to make anything around it invisible, the more stressed the baby gets, the bigger the ratio of the area of the around the baby becomes. So Josuke is able to identify, all right, like this part of blood is becoming invisible, so I will like just straight up go in the center, because it has to be the very center of it, and get a hold of the baby, take him out. And then we get a little nice smile of Joseph, like, all right, like this is actually a pretty cool guy. After being a complete asshole for a second towards him, then we switch over to Joseph after like the little adventure that he had with Joseph. Josuke is at home. He's changing his clothes, and he looks at the bill, like the whole all everything that Joseph basically purchased with Josuke's card, and he notices that he took out a lot of his bank account money, and that's kind of like the pun of the video, so to say. Animation. So going into the three aspects that I talk about in every video: animation, pacing, value to overall plot. Animation. This is the one of those episodes that really bothered me. In general, it was okay. There were very lazy moments in the episode as well. I think the best example that I can think of, that is the example when they're by the coffee table, like talking to one another about the arrow in Akira. I just go and rewatch that episode and look at their faces. Like I think Jojo also, his profile view, like it's a little bit weird. Like certain parts of the faces like just don't look like the characters. So, and that happens throughout the episode a little bit here and there. This was one of those episodes that, in my opinion, wasn't too well animated. Pacing, well paced. We wrapped up the story completely fine. Value to the overall plot. Not really much progression, to be honest. This baby stand user doesn't bring too much progress to the story in general. It doesn't. He's not like a vital point to the Jojo story. Let me just look something up quickly right here. Yes, and a fun little fact. So I wrote this down. The baby's name is now Shizuka Joestar, and because they can't find the mother of the baby, like Joseph decides to adopt the baby, which in a way is kind of fucked up if you think about it, because he's gonna go back to Suzuki and be like, "Yo, I got a baby, a second one that's not yours." So Shizuka Joestar, she gets adopted by Joseph. Now, one more thing that I do want to go into before I end this video, and that is just why I understand that Joseph wanted to see his ex-lover, just see her, even if it was from the distance. In the episode, we also got confirmation that Josuke told Joseph, like, I'm gonna take you there, but you just gotta look from the distance. I don't want her to see you up close, or have any interaction with you. Why couldn't Jotaro just go with Joseph to do that? I know it was a little bit of a side, like we had to take a side road in order to get this Acton baby storyline, and the baby was gonna get fucking killed by that ravished dog that first like is about to attack it. But I don't see the purpose of Josuke being the one to have to bring him by bus. I mean, the Speedwagon Foundation has a shit ton of money. They could have like taken a cab over there, right? And why was it Josuke had to be the only one to do it? I can understand that idea that like Koichi brought up at the end of last episode, and that is the fact that he wanted them to have a little bit of more personal alone time. But I mean, I don't think it was a good idea. Like Jotaro should have been with them, and he could have then given them some alone time, and he could have just been there just to make sure things went well. Anyway, regardless, the episode was fine. I said last week that this was going to be the last episode of the season. However, I see that next week we will be getting another episode, part 1 of 2 maybe. And we're gonna get introduced to a character that's very much beloved around the JoJo community. I'm not gonna spoil his name, but we got a little teaser of him in this video. When I saw that pink sleeve, like I thought, like, wait, is that like the guy that I think it is? I rewinded, and then I saw like, okay, no, it's not a suit. So, and since the character design got already leaked beforehand, before the show even started, like, all right, it's him. And it was a fun little teaser. So I guess we'll see our little asshole next week. My name is YoPOV. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button down below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like, I'm going to be doing this JoJo's overview every single week until the series fucking ends. And by that, I mean until we get all the way to part 8 or 9. So regardless, thank you for watching. Have a good weekend. Bye.